Spirit gave me a message. This too shall pass. And I want to tell you the real story behind it, not some watered down version, okay? Because it's a truth that hits in both the highs and the lows. So remember to take what resonates, leave the rest, use your own discernment, trigger, warning, disclaimer, all that. So maybe you guys have heard this story, I don't know, but there's an old story about a king who only wanted one thing. He wanted a truth that would steady him in every season of his life, okay? Now, he called his wisest advisor, okay? And he said, create something for me that will help me when I'm in sorrow and keep me grounded when I'm in joy. So the advisor went away and came back, and it's just this simple ring. And inside the band were engraved 4 words. This too shall pass. And I can't tell you guys how many times in my life I relied on that, and not even in a religious sense, but yes, when I was religious too. This quote, okay? But the fact that this comes to me now is super meaningful. So the missing part that most of us don't hear is that later, when the king went through grief and loss, he looked at the ring, right? And he remembered, this too shall pass. And it gave him strength because it reminded him that moment wouldn't last forever, right? Those hard times wouldn't last forever. But later, during a celebration, he's living his best life. He's king, rich, royal, surrounded by abundance, laughter, victory, right? And he looked at his ring again. And that same message hit him, but differently. This too shall pass. Not to scare him, but to keep him present. To keep him humble. To remind him to appreciate joy because it's not permanent either. Now, here's what's wild, okay? This idea isn't just in one story. It shows up in spiritual wisdom all over the world. For example, in Buddhism, there's a core teaching called Anicca. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. And it means impermanence. Nothing stays the same, right? Your emotions change, seasons change, your identity changes. Suffering happens when we fight that truth. Peace comes when we accept it. And in Jewish wisdom, there's a phrase, and I'm likely going to butcher this, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Ganze yes yavar. It means this too will pass. It comes from those old stories linked to King Solomon teaching people to stay humble in joy and stay hopeful in pain, right? So 2 very, completely different traditions, but the same truth. Everything moves, everything shifts, nothing is permanent, not the highs and not the lows. And sometimes that's hard to remember. People don't like to hear this part, but that's the truth. Even joy is temporary. Not because life is cruel, but because life is alive. Joy is a wave. It rises, peaks, it transforms. If joy never changed, neither would you, right? The moments shift because you're meant to evolve. You're not supposed to stay frozen in any one chapter. Not the painful ones, and not even the beautiful ones. So the real lesson here is that the ring wasn't made to comfort the king. It wasn't made to discourage him either. It was made to free him from clinging, from gripping, from fearing change, from trying to hold on to what was already moving. So for those of you watching this now, Spirit is saying, you're either terrified that things won't get better or terrified that things won't stay this good. Either way, you're gripping. And life is trying to move you forward. Let it. Breathe. Be here now. Let the season be what it is without trying to freeze it. Thank you, Spirit. So whether you're at your peak or in your pit, remember those 4 words. This too shall pass. Not to warn you, not to comfort you, but to remind you nothing is permanent except your ability to rise through every season. So if this message reached you exactly when you needed it, then you already know why. I'm sending light, love, and healing, and I hope this helped.